So, the Xperia Z, right? Don't you think that that's a great phone? It's a good comeback for Sony. I think it's an awesome phone. It should be really popular. But yeah, I'm glad you like it. All right, so what's been going on with you, man? Oh crap! No, napkins. You know, this is a review unit. I'm supposed to review this, so if it's broken, no one's gonna love me anymore. All right? Just wait. Oh, this is actually a... Oh, I forgot. It's a water-resistant phone. Oh, we're good then. We're good, man. It's okay. Calm down. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? You've been waiting for it. We've been waiting for it, and it's finally here. Because this is the Sony Xperia Z. Oh, come on! Sony is looking to crack the top 3 list of smartphone giants with this latest and greatest offering, the Xperia Z. But does it bring a lot to the table? Well, the short answer is yes. The Xperia Z does get a lot right in many key aspects, so let's see what Sony is packing into its new flagship phone. Obviously, the first thing you'll notice is the design. This angular or rectangular design is honestly something we don't see enough of. It's like with cars. Everything is curved now, but we miss the old days of boxier designs. Pretty much the entire phone is covered in tempered glass and gives the phone a great black slate look. With a flat look all around, it is certainly one of the best phones that Sony has ever put out. The flatness is helped by a myriad of port covers that are obviously there to help with the water resistance. Everything is covered by a removable piece of material. The ports include a headphone jack at the top with a charging port and yes, a micro SD card slot around the other corner. The real story here, however, is the button layout, which Sony has gotten right considering the larger form factor due to the 5-inch screen. All buttons are on the right side, which are the volume rockers and the power button. They are right where your thumb would land, and it makes the handling of the phone even easier. That silver power button is also a great focal point that adds to the phone's already great look. That rectangular feel, believe it or not, actually helps with the handling of the phone. It's easy to grip the flat sides of the phone and it never felt uncomfortable. Well, with the 5-inch screen, you will have to perform some hand gymnastics, but at least the button layout helps. One thing you should know though, the glass coverings are incredibly fingerprint prone. If you show this phone off to your friends, maybe you should have a cloth handy. Speaking of the screen, it's definitely what you expect. This TFT capacitive screen displays at 1080p resolution and has a density of 441 ppi. Those are pretty much what you would want from a screen gracing what is supposed to be a top-tier device. Speaking of 441 ppi, all is very crisp and sharp here, as you can see from the text. As expected, video viewing is great on the Xperia Z. The Bravia engine does seem to do its job making the viewing experience even more wonderful, though a good refresh rate has a hand in it too. If you've ever seen a Bravia television's incredibly smooth motion due to that refresh rate, you get a taste of it here. Unfortunately, despite the fun you'll have on this display, I do have to nitpick on the color rendering. Colors lack a vibrancy, then they actually look quite washed out. It gets a little bit worse when you get outside in broad daylight. You will need the phone at the highest possible level to make it comfortably viewable outside, and the viewing angles actually don't help. Things get further washed out when angled, and you'll get the best out of the screen only when you view it dead on. That being said, however, this is a screen that still brings a great viewing experience. A good example comes from the HD trailer that is built in. When you watch it, the trailer looks like it's playing on a tiny theater screen. The colors, even though they may not be quite too vibrant, are what we usually see from a trailer at the theater. It's kind of like you're seeing it exactly the way Sony really wanted you to. And you know what? That's really not bad at all. Of course, you won't be able to enjoy all of this without the power to back it up. Thankfully, Sony knows what's going big in the Android market and put in just what the Xperia Z needed. The Snapdragon S4 Pro processor clocks in at 1.5 GHz and is backed by the tried and true Adreno 320 graphics processor. And then, 2 GB of RAM is what you will get for multitasking. Now, this is a graphics package that powers some of the top current Android smartphones, so it's no surprise that it appears here. As far as the benchmarks go, they are really very great. The Xperia Z is the first phone I have seen or reviewed that breaks the 20,000 barrier in the Antutu benchmark application. Quadrant and Vayamo scores are also very high, and you can see them in my written review. The big story in the hardware, however, is the micro SD slot. Many people have lamented over the lack of removable batteries and expandable memory and even top tier offerings. So even though you don't get to pop out that battery, you do get to pop in a micro SD card if you need more storage than the 16 or 32 gigabytes that might be built in. This is yet another detail that Sony gets right in the Xperia Z. Speaking of the battery, it holds the typical hope of proper capacity for a 5-inch screen. As has been the case for pretty much every 5-inch phone on the market today, it yields mixed results. Tests have shown it to have a great amount of talking time and a decent amount of web browsing time, but video playback, which is the test I use, yielded just over 5.5 hours of straight viewing. The Xperia Z should be able to go the distance in day-to-day usage with no problems. Nightly charging is a reality we all live with, but at least you won't run out of juice in an inopportune moment. There are some nice options for stamina mode and power saving, so taking advantage of those will likely extend your time with the Xperia Z even further. But now we get to the camera. The rear camera is the story here with its 13-megapixel Exmor RS powered optics capable of HDR, sweeping panorama, and various other scene-related picture modes. Superior Auto is a feature unique to Xperia cameras. It analyzes the scene to figure out the best settings to properly expose the photo. For the most part, it is pretty accurate. These pictures are at 9 megapixels with a 16:9 aspect ratio. This is more my style than 4:3, and apparently it's also Sony's because that was the default setting. As is the typical result, pictures with adequate lighting yield pretty great results, with colors being rendered quite well with a shallow depth of field because of a decent aperture speed. Superior Auto seems to do the job fairly well, and thus pictures are exposed properly. The flash does help in very low light shots, but having the right lighting helps in this and really all types of photography. Video can be recorded at 1080p full HD resolution, and it was demonstrated already, as always, in my intro. Ultimately, it's a step closer to replacing your point-and-shoot camera, if only by a small margin. It's better described as a great companion to have in your pocket for those tight moments. Luckily, you'll probably get some pretty great shots in the nick of time. And lastly, we look at the software. The first things you notice are the black and gray tones that Sony seems to employ often in their designs. The general layout is reminiscent of Android Ice Cream Sandwich, with these darker tones and white or neon blue hues. And that kind of imitation isn't really a bad thing because this interface thus has a minimalistic beauty to it. This is, however, Jelly Bean 4.1, which is still behind in the OS game, but the Xperia Z deserves credit for being somewhat up to date. You get Google Now here coupled with some of Sony's own tweaks like a power widget in the notification dropdown and a unique launcher customizer. You even get to remove or add more home screens, which to me is a welcome addition. Sony-designed applications do make appearances here, like the Gallery, which is called Album, and the Walkman app. Perhaps the most notable, though, are the small apps, which are accessible in the Recent Apps screen. From there, you can select from an expandable list of small apps that run as an overlay over whatever you already have running. It's a nice way to get even more multitasking done. All in all, the Xperia Z, whether it knows it or not, manages to give you the best of multiple worlds by including Jelly Bean features in a more ICS style with Sony's own apps built in. It does just enough to be different while bringing what people love about stock Android along, and that deserves quite a bit of credit. And so, there you have it. Sony's new flagship phone really does get a lot of things right, with its great design, wonderful specifications, a more than decent camera, and accessible software. The water resistance might not be something that you will use all the time, but it is a great party trick and is sure to impress your friends. Coming in at almost $800 unlocked, however, you are paying a real premium for one of the most anticipated phones of 2013. This phone is definitely coming to the States, but we don't currently know for what carriers or in what different ways, if any, it will come in. Nonetheless, this is certainly Sony's coming out party, and if ours and plenty of others' experiences are any indication, the company definitely now deserves to be among the best in the cell phone and smartphone market. For all of the upcoming Xperia Z news and features, stay tuned to AndroidAuthority.com, your source for all things Android.